and Katili.
A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us on KTN Prime. We have a comprehensive bulletin for you tonight. Our sign language interpreter at the bottom end of your screen is William Sila.
The government appears to have changed tune once more on who was behind the killings in Lamu in June.
Asman Kamama, who chairs the National Assembly Committee on Administration and National Security, today told Parliament the Al-Shabaab was behind the killings.
This comes after both President Uhuru Kenyatta and Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Olelenku categorically blamed local political networks for the atrocities.
KTN's Edith Kimani has the details.
It took a few attempts to get it out of him, but eventually members of the National Assembly were able to get a direct answer from Asman Kamama, the chair of the Parliamentary Committee on National Security, on just who was responsible for the Lamu attacks.
Indeed, it was done by Al-Shabaab in cahoots with locals.
The response, while clear, however, adds more questions to the unresolved insecurity concern. Soon after the first of the Lamu attacks that left 65 people dead in Mpeketoni, President Uhuru Kenyatta made a definite announcement on who was allegedly responsible.
This, therefore, was not an Al-Shabaab terrorist attack. Evidence indicates that local political networks were involved in the planning and execution of the heinous crime.
This assertion was made despite the Al-Shabaab having claimed responsibility for the killings. A month later, Cabinet Secretary Joseph Olelenku would, with similar persuasion, make another accusation against politicians.
Opposition preparing Mungiki to advance their agenda. Opposition trying to use MRC to undermine security. Or an opposition trying to even give Al-Shabaab some energy to show that there is a problem of insecurity. Wakenya mpaka tukatae hiyo.
So whose version of the story is right? Kamama's claim in Parliament today could only have been made with the authority of the executive. So has government gone back on its word, accusing instead the Al-Shabaab after all? If they are accusing the Al-Shabaab, then where did the idea of politicians getting involved come from? Are these accusations based on any intelligence? Unfortunately for the over 100 families of those who have died in the continued attacks in Lamu, those tasked with providing clear answers are creating more questions. And today, the answer is that
indeed it was done by Al-Shabaab in cahoots with locals.
Edith Kimani, KTN.
That is the basis of a big question tonight, and we are asking you, do you think the government should apologize to Kenyans over the confusion over the Lamu attacks?
Let us know what you think. You can send a short message to the number 22155. You can tweet us as well at KTN Kenya, at Linda Ogutu, and at Ben_Kitili. Lots of confusion there. The President and the CS Interior both blaming it on political networks, and now this committee pointing their finger on Al-Shabaab. So who is telling the truth?
Indeed, and let's stay in Lamu County, shall we? Directors of companies that own the Lamu land entities and investigation have been ordered to report to the CID headquarters and make their statements. CID Director Ndego Muhoro gave the directive this morning in Mombasa, as he revealed the directors couldn't be traced from where they were. And as our senior coast reporter Ferdinand Omondi reports, the Jubilee side of the National Assembly is demanding the immediate arrest of suspects named over the Lamu land saga.
Parliamentarians were once again divided right down the middle, with Jubilee MPs insisting former Lands Minister James Orengo should answer for the alleged land grabbing in Lamu.
The most visible land grabbing and irregularities occurred under the leadership of the Grand Coalition government of the last Grand Coalition government, spearheaded by the then Minister for Lands, Honorable Senator James Orengo. During that period, and also during the transition period, April 2011 and November 2012, over 1 million files could not be traced in our registries.
The Jubilee team is taking the war with court over the Lamu land far beyond their titles issue. As court blasts Jubilee for non-implementation of the TJRC report, the Jubilee side also have their own report to wave in court's face.
The Dungu report was done when the former Prime Minister, the former Finance Minister, who even allocated himself land outside Kenya in the name of the embassies, he sold land and property of the Kenyan Foreign Ministry. It has never happened since Munyi Wayaki as a Foreign Minister to Amina Mohamed in 2014.
Bwana Orengo alivyokuwa anafanya shughuli hizi za kupeana ardhi Lamu na kwengineko, maana alipeana mpaka Dongo Kundu, alipeana Kwale, alipeana Mombasa, kote tunapafahamu. Kwa hivyo tunasema hivi ya kwamba alivyokuwa anapeana, alipeana akifuata sheria za nchi? Jibu ni hapana.
President Uhuru Kenyatta's directive to have 500,000 acres of land in Lamu revoked from 22 entities has been raising dust across political and administrative circles. The Criminal Investigations Department now reveals that the addresses provided by the directors of the companies may have been bogus.
By yesterday, we tried to trace the directors from the offices or the addresses that they have given. We have not located them. All is not lost. We've received from the Registrar General of Companies the list of the directorship of all those companies. We're going for them.
Ndego revealed that his officers have been trailing the paperwork around the controversy and is now ordering the named directors to show up and tell their side of the story.
We have recorded quite a number of statements from land officials and other persons who might have a hand in allocation of these lands.
At the same time, the National Land Commission has given the directors 15 days to appear before them and explain how they acquired the land titles. But Mohamed Swazuri has poured cold water on Land Cabinet Secretary Charity Ngilu's move to close the lands registry in Mombasa, Kwale and Lamu, saying the move has nothing to do with the ongoing investigations in the Lamu land saga.
She started closing registries long before the complaint from the president in Nairobi in February. I don't think it has got anything to do with the complaint that was received, because as I've told you, we have been reviewing these parcels daily on a daily basis. Reviewing these parcels is not an event.
A presidential directive to recover 500,000 acres of illegally acquired land has opened up a can of worms that is now transforming into a political roller coaster of accusations and counter-accusations. The real victims in this saga can only hope that all the bickering will eventually end up in actual justice getting served. Ferdinand Omondi, KTN, Mombasa.
We're still on the Lamu land matter, and pressure is mounting on the government agencies to unmask the individuals linked to the alleged grabbing of 500,000 acres of public land in Lamu. But who exactly are the people behind the companies named as landowners in Lamu? KTN Samogina reports.
The Lamu massacre set off a series of chain reactions across the country, and land appears to be right at the thick of things. 500,000 acres, nearly 70% of the tiny Lamu County, allegedly allocated to 22 private entities, majority of them ghost companies. But the National Lands Commission's boss, Mohamed Swazuri, says the commission will summon the landowners or company directors to validate their title deeds.
Wahitaji wajieleze, na ambaye ataonekana kwamba stakabadhi zake haziko sawa, title anapokonywa au inafutwa, na tunafanya reallocation.
But even as the Lands Commission's boss promises to crack the whip, the characters in the controversy surrounding the land dealings in Lamu remain shadowy and mysterious. Though sources say the list contains names of big businessmen, politicians and top state officials. Out of the 22 entities owning land in Lamu, 14 of them cannot be traced anywhere in the lands registries. But that notwithstanding, the 14 have been allocated a cumulative total of over 250,000 acres. This compounds nearly half of the 500,000 acres in contest. Meanwhile, another 3 companies of the remaining 8 companies have been double registered, the entities bearing different directors. Reports indicate that more than half of the directors in these companies and society groups are not the real owners but mere proxies holding brief for the actual owners. The principal owners reportedly being powerful locals and some foreigners hiding behind the shadowy companies that are untraceable.
The signatures that we have are signatures of the Commissioner of Lands, and obviously it is a process. To issue a title deed is a process. It is just not one person who gives authority to the Commissioner. The Commissioner must have received documents. Some of them are backdated.
With the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and the Inspector General of Police digging in to unravel the mystery behind the Lamu land scam, there is growing skepticism that the public will never know the principal owners behind these shadowy entities. Whether by chance or design, Lands Ministry has failed to unearth the details of the 14 ghost companies despite managing to get directorship of 8 other companies.
From our investigations, it would appear like some of the surveyors who actually have given to say that this land was surveyed and have actually signed to say this is surveyed land didn't seem to even go on the ground.
The Lamu land issue is gradually already being swallowed in the traditional bickering and accusations between Jubilee and CORD politicians. Samogina, KTN.
Moving away from Lamu, the Governors Council has said governors will not sit on the newly created county development boards chaired by senators. And as KTN's Rita Tinin now reports, governors and senators are also at loggerheads over summonses to governors by the Senate.
Things came to a head last week when President Uhuru Kenyatta signed into law the County Government's Amendment Act. And now governors say they just won't take part in the county development boards with senators as chairmen.
If Parliament wants to come down and manage the counties, they have to amend the constitution to make themselves part of the counties. Otherwise, as of now, there are 2 levels of government.
Governors insist that the creation of the county development boards is unconstitutional and have moved to court to block the move.
Until a ruling is obtained, they are not going to participate in those boards.
The issue of development boards is only part of the latest tussle between senators and governors. Bomet Governor and Chairman of the Council of Governors, Isaac Ruto, on Tuesday refused to appear before the Senate Public Accounts and Investment Committee.
And summoning governors on every flimsy excuse on matters that are self-explanatory.
Ruto had been summoned over issues that were raised in an audit report by the Auditor General, but chose to send officers from the Bomet County government, including the County Secretary and the Chief Finance Officer.
If you don't come, then they say you will pay for the transport for the officers who have come. They will surcharge you, acting like a kangaroo court.
Ruto insists that governors are accountable to their respective counties. He says the Senate should give audience to county executives and chief officers and only issue summonses to governors as a last resort.
Do they want the information or they want to see the governors?
It is not the first time that senators and governors are reading from different scripts. The summonses and the creation of development boards have opened another supremacy battlefront between governors and senators. Rita Tinina, KTN.
A section of locals in Trans Nzoia and Uasin Gishu have been forced to seek refuge in police stations or fields, not fearing that they may lose their lives, but that they may be forcefully inducted into manhood. KTN's Wilkis Tanyabo now reports on the start of the circumcision season among the Bukusu and the drive to circumcise everyone in the area.
A group marching down a village road, an unusual sight indeed for residents of Trans Nzoia and Uasin Gishu.
Even stranger yet, the matter they were protesting, members of the Turkana community in the two areas were registering their stand against the practice of forceful circumcision conducted by the neighboring Bukusu community. Since the beginning of August, traditionally the month of circumcision for the Bukusu, every other year, locals have been going from door to door seeking uncircumcised individuals and circumcising them forcefully. 12 people have been circumcised so far. The Turkana claim that their traditions do not leave room for circumcision.
Tunaharibiwa kwa kimila mtu mwingine tofauti. Sio kwani nimekataa. Lakini wakanishika na nguvu, sasa nikabidi tu nikakubali.
Sections of other communities are now taking refuge in police stations or enduring cold nights in the maize fields for fear of being circumcised.
Hataki hiyo mambo. Isigia tena mama siku nyingine tena. Kwa nini hiyo watu naanza kutahiri zizi kwa barabara?
But for those already circumcised, albeit forcefully,
nimefurahia vile nimekuwa mwanaume sasa. Wale baada wamebaki hao nao wajikaze.
Wilkes Nyabwa, KTN.
Bukusu always making the headlines, seemingly. To the US now, where President Barack Obama will, in the next 3 hours, make a final pitch for what analysts have called a new relationship with Africa as the summit nears its end.
Only last evening, Obama announced new deals amounting to more than twice Kenya's current budget to finance development in Africa. KTN's Joe Ageo reports on the development and why Kenyan officials are giving it a thumbs up.
His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta.
The arrival of Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta for the big dinner hosted by President Obama at the White House. But this was not the highlight of the day.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Please be seated.
Moments before that, President Obama gave the signal that indeed this meeting could be a game changer for the continent, announcing deals worth more than 2.6 trillion Kenya shillings in new investments by American firms, with nearly a third of that targeting the crucial energy sector.
And as of today, including an additional $12 billion in new commitments being announced this week by our private sector partners and the World Bank and the government of Sweden, we've now mobilized a total of more than $26 billion to power Africa.
That can only be good news for Kenya, that is currently pushing to improve its power generation at least tenfold by 2030.
In these 5-year plans, we have 282 flagship projects between 2013 and 2017. Now, each of those flagship projects can actually have several investment opportunities.
L'Afrique est un vaste continent. And African leaders attending this meeting know that it can't be business as usual for the continent.
Our relations should not only be relations between aid donor and aid recipient.
On our side, we still have to do more of providing for business, ease of doing business.
But amid the optimism, concern still looms large over Africa's willingness to walk the talk of good governance.
So African government need to clean their houses first. So we think that term limits, succession planning, free and fair elections, those are things that America wants to see.
Now, the question of political governance has come up in just about every session here at this summit. But with economic stakes rising ever so high in Africa, political governance is unlikely to be part of the success criteria when this meeting comes to an end. Joageo, KTN, Washington, D.C.
Let's stay in the U.S. and President Uhuru Kenyatta has raised his concerns on insecurity in East Africa, saying Kenya feels abandoned in terror war.
In an interview with CNN's Richard Quest on the sidelines of the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit in Washington, D.C., President Kenyatta said Kenya felt abandoned by the international community in its fight against terrorism.
President Kenyatta explained to Quest that following the 9/11 attacks, the international community rallied around the U.S. But in Kenya's case, the West immediately issued travel advisories. Here is the interview that aired on CNN.
On our part, what we are doing is increasing tremendously our investment in the security sector, because we recognize that security is key towards ensuring long-term investment and stability as well. But I think what is important for all of us to recognize is that the problem of security that is posed in Kenya is not actually a Kenyan problem. It's an international problem. It is a problem of terrorism that is not Kenya specific but worldwide. And the need for us to recognize that we need to all work together to fight this particular issue. And America itself, and this is something that I constantly remind people, has been a victim of terror. And when it was a victim of terror, the whole world rallied behind the United States in support of our battle against terror. And this is the way we need to actually focus on our current challenges in East Africa and realize that this is a global threat, and a global threat that requires global partnership in order for us to be able to defeat and secure not just Kenya, but the world from this particular threat.
So reading between the lines, you don't feel that you're getting that. You may be getting public support, or you may be getting public expressions of support, but if I understand you right, Mr. President, you're not getting that underlying support, whether it's travel.
Absolutely, because if you look at it especially from the point of view of travel advisories, I don't think that helps us defeat the security threat. It actually encourages it. And what we're looking for are people to be able to understand that those kind of travel advisories don't necessarily only hurt the country, but they actually give encouragement to the very same people we're trying to defeat. And that's why, for example, you know, when we get positive statements like from Richard Branson, for example, when looking at the Kenyan situation, and he goes out there and he says, no, let's not issue these travel advisories. We should actually face up to the enemy. We should actually invest more. We should actually be more in Kenya, because this is truly the long-term way of defeating this particular threat.
I just want to return to this point that you've said, again, this question of the public level of support that Kenya is getting that perhaps you don't feel you're getting at the moment in your battle against on the security issue.
We think that it would require and does need much more support, especially from the international community. We as a region are doing everything that we can with the limited resources that we have, and we believe that we need much more partnership, especially in supporting not just our forces, supporting the Somalian government, so that the operations that are ongoing can be expanded to cover a greater part of Somalia, so that we can reduce the area of operation of people like Al-Shabaab.
Are you feeling a bit alone?
Well, let me not say we're feeling alone, because Kenya is not alone in Somalia.
No, but I'm talking about in your battle against Al-Shabaab, in your battle on terror, when you've got travel advisories, when you've got people, are you feeling a bit like...
We do feel like the world isn't doing enough to support us in confronting the challenges that we have, especially when we recognize that those challenges are not just Kenyan challenges, but are global challenges which require global effort.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Let's now take you to Baringo County.
Now, many of you may view the tortoise as a harmless animal, but as strange as it may sound, a conflict has arisen between tortoises and a section of residents of the county of Baringo. Now, farmers in Sagasagiki area have invented what is being considered a unique torture mechanism to get rid of tortoises destroying their crops. KTN's Kamta Menza has that story.
This is what Joseph Cheriot wakes up to every morning in his 2-acre farm. Going through his farm to get rid of any tortoises, he says more often than not destroy the beans plantation in the farm. And once he finds any, he collects them and confines them at one point.
Kiamuka, minapata karibu 20 hivi. Kwanza wanaanza chini hivi. He tells
us that this number of tortoises is what he collected in the morning, and that he confines them in this manner for at least 6 days, just to keep them off his beans before he releases them, as they believe that once they go, they never come back.
Sasa nikipendwa hivi na hasa hao hapo shamba hiyo. Sasa inatoroka nje. Sasa wengine mpya anaingia tena.
He says he has been grappling with these destructive tortoise for over 10 years now, as even fencing will not help, as they will always find their way in the farms.
Kwanza ukipanda shamba kidogo, wawili tu wakiingia kama nusu eka hivi, ile kubwa kubwa, huwezi pata kitu. Huwezi.
Hasara ni kubwa sana, maana mtu tuseme amepanda kama eka moja ya maharagwe, huwa saila wanyama wa chakula anatarajia kama gunia 4 hivi. Na wakifamia wanaweza pata tu kilo 15.
A number of farmers face the same challenge. Christine Cherono and Samson Chibon also share the same predicament. They say that's the only way to get rid of the animals, and sometimes carrying them out of their farms.
Kama hizi sasa inatoa hizi sasa, ndio marakwe sasa, kama ingepata hivi ingekuwa afadhali, lakini ndio anakulanga hizi sote napakiza hii miti peke yake.
Sagasagik Assistant Chief Kipkoech Cherono argues that in the year 2006, KWS officers collected and relocated a number of the tortoise in the area. Though up to date, they have not seen such other exercise, even as the population of the animal continues to multiply.
Lakini walikuwa nasema ikiwa wanaona wakulima wanahitaji sana watolewe hizo vitu, anasema wakulima wasanye hiyo hao wanyama, alafu waite KWS watakuja chukua ama waone vile watafanyia.
It's one of the rare animals that one would associate it to destruction, though contrary to many who view the tortoise as a harmless, lazy and slow animal, residents of Sagasagik village find the tortoise as a thorn in the flesh and an enemy within, that each day they wish they would find a solution, now afraid that farmers may do away with beans farming if a solution won't be forthcoming.
Lakini nyinyi nakuja hapa alafu nyinyi na sisi kwa chukua hii yote. Daisa mwambia serikali na kuja chukua.
Kamchemenza, KTN from Baringo County.
Poor animals, they actually look very harmless. Now, KTN is giving you the opportunity to have your say on issues of governance, human rights and development in its newest show dubbed Sikika Sasa. The one-of-a-kind show is going to bring together not only the biggest names in development, but also one of the most talked about show hosts. Here are the details.
Land issues at the coast, marginalization in northern Kenya, devolution wrangles, unemployment, all these issues affecting ordinary Kenyans, and a platform to speak is needed. Because of this reason, the Standard Group, the United Nations Development Program, and Mkenya Kenya have partnered together to bring you the Sikika Sasa show.
Going to cover the counties of Kilifi, Turkana, Machakos, Homa Bay, Kapsabet and Nairobi. And our own Jeff Koinange is going to be the host every Friday evening between 8 and 9.
We want to bring this to the people so that they understand, the issues, because they really understand the issues themselves, and they can air it out and then talk about what concerns them, what is their role, and also what are the solutions that they would like.
These are the things that will change our country.
Be sure to catch the first episode on the 15th of August.
Good evening, my name is Boni Tunya. This is Business. The parastatal reforms in the country kicked off in earnest today with the Ministry of Agriculture merging 8 regulatory bodies under its mandate. Now this follows the recommendations made by the Presidential Task Force on Parastatals that called for the merging of institutions to create efficiency in the government. The regulatory bodies will be collapsed into the new Agriculture, Fisheries and Food Authority, with the ministry quick to assure that there will be no job losses. Here's KTN's Philip Kitani.
Kenya's agricultural sector for years has been described as the economic backbone. However, the sector has not had a well-structured agenda to boost food security, not to mention high returns to farmers. The sector has over 42 parastatals that the ministry says will have to be streamlined to create efficiency and bolster the sector's prospects.
The previously existing institutions will automatically convert into directorates, and they will continue carrying out the activities that they have been carrying out.
The merger in the sector will create two new bodies, the Kenya Agricultural Fisheries and Food Authority and the Kenya Agriculture and Livestock Research Organization. Among the parastatals that will be collapsed into directories include the Sisal Board of Kenya, Cotton Development Authority, National Cereals and Produce Board, Coffee Board of Kenya, Tea Board of Kenya, Kenya Sugar Board, the Pyrethrum Board of Kenya, Coconut Development Authority, Kenya Planters Health Inspectorate Services, and the Horticultural Crops Development Authority. Agricultural sector reforms began in 2003 with the formulation of the Economic Recovery Strategy for the Wealth and the Empowerment Creation and the Strategy for Revitalization of Agriculture, with the view of harmonizing the legal framework that could rationalize multiple legislation and regulations governing the sector. Prior to the current reforms, the sector had in excess of 130 laws that made the sector incompetitive, inefficient, and too bureaucratic for a conducive business environment.
We are looking at a situation perhaps which requires several amendments to ensure that AFA Act and Crops Act will work seamlessly with other laws.
The Cabinet Secretary, however, says there will be no job losses following the merger. Philip Keitan, KTN Business.
Well, the Econ Group has announced plans to invest 40 billion shillings in multiple property developments in Nairobi over the next 2 years. The property developer, that is partly owned by investment firm Britam, says it's putting up mixed development buildings that include shopping malls, hotels, residential houses and offices, targeting the growing middle class and the lower end of the property market. Here's KTN's Michael Karanja with that report.
Kenya's property market remains an attractive investment option given the growing demand for office space, houses and even shopping outlets. This insatiable appetite is being driven by the country's growing middle class that has seen property developers put up multi-billion projects as they seek to cash in. The Econ Group says it has already secured sizable chunks of land for the developments that will be targeted at different market segments. In addition to having properties in upmarket areas in Nairobi, the firm will also be putting up shopping malls and mixed-use developments in Mulongo, Kitengela and along Jogoo Road. The plan for the major investments by Econ comes despite concerns that the country's property market could be staring at a crisis of sorts due to an oversupply of high-end housing units. Prices of housing in upmarket areas, especially in Nairobi, have stagnated, while many developers that had put rental units targeted at the same market segment are finding a difficult time to fill up their properties. For Econ, this is seen as a temporary shock that will correct itself.
However, property speculators are very few in this market. We do not believe that they have sufficient capital to actually move the market and create a bubble.
The firm said it plans to raise the finances through 20% equity and 60% debt, while the remainder will be sourced from the public. The group is 25% owned by Britam, which is positioning itself to be a dominant player in property development after also taking up a majority stake in housing finance. Michael Karanja, KTN Business.
A rally in the banking, investment, insurance counters has been the key driver in the boom at the Nairobi Securities Exchange, which has seen the 20-share index jump past the 5,000 mark for the first time since January. Now, this has allowed investors to reap from the big increases in share price, but a slowdown in the commercial and services segment and the emergency of segment that is dragging the bus. Here's KTN's Adelaide Changola with the rest of that report.
After an 8-month wait, the Nairobi Securities Exchange finally broke the 5,000 psychological mark as the ongoing rally lifted the 20-share index.
The all-share index is up about 13%, whereas the NSE 20 is around about 2.6%.
Amongst the biggest drivers of the rally were the banking and insurance counters, which registered an average gain of 20% over the period. Equity Bank saw its share price jump 49.2% from 31 shillings in January to 46 shillings and 45 cents, while CFC Stanbic share price gained 48.8% to trade at 128 shillings, up from 86 in January. Housing Finance was trading at 44 shillings and 75 cents, 46.7% higher than January's price, while KCB was up 34.1% over the period. At the same time, insurance firms Pan-Africa, Britam and CAC Insurance gained 42, 34 and 30% respectively as their diversification efforts increased their attractiveness to investors.
The return on equity in the banking sector is pretty good in Kenya, and I think that's really what's driving investors in there.
But the rally has not diffused to all counters, with some having shared critical numbers over the 8 months. Amongst these are Kenya Airways, whose share price lost 14%, and TPS East Africa, which manages the Serena chain of hotels, which has shed 20% of its share owing to the recent spate of terrorism attacks that have crippled the tourism sector.
A very good evening and a warm welcome to KTN Sports. I'm Lane Washira, and we kick off the bulletin with matters football, where Bobby Williamson has accepted the Harambee Stars job and will now terminate his contract with Premier League side Gor Mahia after the Sekafa Club Championships in Kigali, Rwanda. The Scot says the job was too attractive to turn down, and what remains are formalities before he embarks on rebuilding the national football team. Williamson spoke to KTN's Hassan Juma at the City Stadium earlier today.
Some years back, while in Uganda, Bobby Williamson prophesied that he would one day manage Kenya's Harambee Stars. And his wish was granted on Tuesday when he was named the new man at the helm. He accepted the offer with glee, but he has to first guide Gor Mahia at the Sekafa Club Championships in Rwanda.
We've agreed in principle about a few things, but it's obviously a contract. He was in the contract. And,
will you juggle Gor Mahia and the national team Harambee Stars?
No, I can't. It's one or the other. As I said, I would love to get an opportunity at the national level again, but I can't come here and convince Gor Mahia players that they're the best in the country, and then when a friendly match comes along and not select them and select players in their positions for other clubs. So as I said, I can't do that.
His namesake and assistant coach at Gor Mahia, John Bobby Ogola, feels the Stars' job is shrouded in political intrigues for any local manager's liking, but he feels FKF was spot on in the appointment. He's ready to wear Williamson's shoes.
Bobby is one guy who has done well with the Uganda national team, and I think he should be able to do the same with the Harambee Stars. Yeah, we have a lot of talent here, and Bobby is a patient guy, he's a gentleman.
Ni pigo kubwa sana kwetu kama Gor Mahia. Bobby Williamson amekuwa kama mzazi kwetu, kukiwa na shida yuko hapo kuitatua.
The Sekafa Regional Championships could be Bobby Williamson's last assignment with Gor Mahia, and he believes he has put enough structures in place to ensure that this club retains the league while he takes up the national soccer team Harambee Stars responsibilities. Hassan Juma, KTN at the City Stadium here in Nairobi.
And in Kisumu City, the Kisumu Rugby Football Club will this weekend host the Dallas Sevens Rugby Fiesta at the city's Mamboleo Showgrounds. This is after an injunction barring its financial transactions was lifted by a Kisumu court. The club is now putting final touches ahead of the Fiesta that kicks off on Saturday morning, with 32 teams expected to participate. Fred Omula gives us the latest.
Kisumu Rugby Football Club preferred the new venue due to its spacious grounds that can allow 2 matches to be played at the same time and has several access points. The Police grounds will be used by participating teams for practice sessions.
At the showgrounds, we've got a number of gates. We can control crowd, we can control everything. And we are also going to build security around the showground. So in terms of capacity, showground will actually have more capacity. We'll have shades where spectators will sit.
This year's tourney comes after wrangles blocked new officials from accessing the club's bank accounts. But a Kisumu court ruled yesterday that the current officials are in office legally and that they can transact club business.
We have converged our energies and we're working together for the success of Dallas Sevens. Because one thing that has been clear is that throughout, everybody in Kisumu wanted to see a successful Dallas Sevens.
Former National Sevens captain Dan Ouma, who is helping in the preparations, donated boots to Kisumu Day School that will participate in the Fiesta this weekend.
We're encouraging schools that are playing rugby within the region to approach us and apply, just like Kisumu Day has done. And once we are satisfied that they met the criteria, we have today given them 20 payments worth about 60,000-70,000.
Dala Sevens is the second leg of the Safaricom Sevens series. KCB won the opening leg, the Kababerry Sevens, last weekend in Nairobi. Fredo Mulo, KTN Sports.
There you have it. Kisumu City is the place to be this weekend, and that's how we wrap up KTN Sports tonight. I'm Lane Washira. Do have a good night and enjoy the rest of your viewing.
Great, we're done. Let's look at our big question tonight. We had asked you, should the government apologize to Kenyans for the confusion over the Lamu attacks?
76% of you say yes, and 24% of you say no. William Balak says damage already done, appropriate measures set up in place to curb insecurity should be enough. Apology.
Jalut says, how does the government expect Kenyans to trust them if they keep lying to us and feeding us the wrong information?
And Patrick Munavi says, yes, to expect the state to apologize is quite a tall order. That explains why the government has been stonewalling on answers.
Colin says, yes, because they created tension by claiming that Lamu killings were ethnic cleansing. Those are your opinions. Thank you for writing in, for being part of the bulletin. Remember, Jeff Koinange Live comes your way in just a few minutes after this bulletin. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Linda Ogutu.
Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Ben Kitili. Good night.